my name's Elizabeth and I'm 39 years old and live in Atlantic, Canada. About a year and a half ago, I really got into audiobooks, and in 2024, I read a little over 100 of them. I'm now on pace to read about 60 in 2025. Yes, I said read audiobooks. It's the same thing, so come at me if you must. On here, I would like to document the books that I've been reading for myself and also to create a community. I'd really like to give and get book suggestions, and I think this is a great place to do that. I'm currently using Goodreads, and I would love it if everyone would follow me here and friend me over there on Goodreads. I'll leave links below so that you can do that. My goal each month is to make sure that I upload a video telling you about whatever books I read in the previous month. I will rate each book that I read on a scale of 1 to 5 as to how much I enjoyed them. FYI, I really like contemporary romance books, and so if it's in that genre, I will also rate it on the spicy scale, because that might be important to some people. So as I'm describing the books, you will see a picture pop up here so that you'll know what it looks like in case you're trying to find it. In July 2025, I read 8 books, so let's dive in. So the first book I read was titled It's a Love Story. This book exudes an enemies to lovers vibe. It's very much a summer read. The story begins in Hollywood and then moves to Long Island for the majority of the book. I would rate this book a 3 out of 5. It was a quick, easy read that kept my attention. My favorite part of the book was getting to know the large family, including his parents, siblings, in-laws, nieces, nephews, the whole shebang. You see, when they go to Long Island, it's to go to a music festival. And so since it's a small town, all the hotels are booked, and they end up having to stay in his house that he grew up in. All his siblings live nearby and are mostly married with kids. As an only child of a single mom, the female lead makes many observations about his family dynamics that are heartwarming, emotional, and just raw. She's also a child actor, which is really the only significant trigger warning I can think of for this book, because as you might imagine, it had a really significant effect on her sense of self. Also, she had a unacquainted feeling thing with her co-star, but in the end, you're really happy that they don't get together because you don't like them at all throughout the book, and she definitely ends up getting someone better. I would rate this book very mild on the spice scale. If you prefer closed bedroom romance, this is probably a good book for you. The little romantic gestures that are throughout the book are actually really cute and sweet. So the second book I read was called Hello, Trouble. So I'll start out by telling you that this book is part of a 9-book series. It's currently the last one out, and I'm pretty sure if there is a 10th, that one's going to be the last. I say this because I rank this book a 4 out of 5, and I think a major part of that is how much I've enjoyed all the characters. I adore a good romance series where you finish each book just clamoring for the next one and wanting to read every family member's love story. In this one in particular, it's a grumpy to sunshine trope. So he's a grumpy mechanic, the last of all his siblings to fall in love. He's described as tattooed, rough around the edges, and living his single life to the fullest. But beneath all that swagger, though, he has major golden retriever energy, especially when it comes to the female lead. Even though he's not saying sweet things out loud when you read his POV, you know what he's thinking. It's so cute. She, on the other hand, is a total romantic. She's been dreaming of her perfect man since childhood, and she's beginning to feel stifled by the little town they live in and feeling like she's already dated everyone. The two have known each other for years and just haven't looked at each other that way. And then they did. And watching that happen is a really fun read. The only trigger warning I can think of with this book is a young loss of a parent and dealing with that grief. I would rate this book a medium on the spice scale. Definitely not a closed bedroom situation, but only a couple of spicy scenes. So if you're not interested in that, you could skip that. The third and fourth books I read are part of a different series. So the third book was called Gone Country. This book was the final installment in a long series about a large family of cowboys in Wyoming. So the book is about moving across country and settling in a new environment and finding love in unexpected places. To sum it up, the male lead in this book found out in a previous book in the series that he had been adopted. So he grew up in a completely different state where he knew and learned absolutely nothing about ranching. And all of a sudden finds out he has all this family in Wyoming. So in this book, in order to reconnect with that family and get his daughter out of some trouble, he's moving back to Wyoming. I would rate this book about 2 out of 5. I truly enjoyed getting to know this large cowboy family. I was clamoring for more of the supporting characters and cast in this book. Although I liked the narrative of this book, I thought some of the other books were way better. Wasn't my favorite. I'll cover the trigger warnings as part of the next book. They cross over, so I just think it makes more sense to kind of go over all that together. So the fourth book I read is titled Unbreak My Heart. This was the continuation of Gone Country. So I think the author initially intended this book to be like a spin-off series, which would cover like the next generation of this large family. But this work was written in 2016, so it's been like 10 years. If she was continuing with, I really think we would have seen another book. So I recall I mentioned that the protagonist in the previous book moved across the country to get his daughter out of some trouble. And so she was a major theme. And throughout that book, you were seeing flashes of her and her first real love. So this book is catching up with them, those two, like 7 to 8 years later, and they're now young adults reconnecting. I would also rate this book a 2 out of 10. It seemed like the end of a really long soap opera, and I was left wishing there was more interaction with the previous cast again. This one had practically none of the characters from the old book, and I was missing that. This also book has some very significant trigger warnings. Difficult themes include family trauma, adoption, divorce, parental abandonment, incest of a parent, parental substance abuse, and child neglect. So I will say these themes in the book are much darker than I remember the books in this series being. So it wasn't my favorite, and I found those themes a little more difficult than I usually read. I would rate all of these books on the extra spicy scale. And this one certainly deserves that classification. So please also bear that in mind as well if that's a factor for you. So the fifth book I read was called Say You'll Remember Me. This book was definitely a love at first sight story. They meet, go on a date, and then he finds out that she's moving across the country the next morning to take care of her mother, who's sick. So most of the book is about them going back and forth, trying to figure out long distance or how they can move closer, but neither of them can leave their current where they're living, so it just doesn't work. It was definitely a good book, and it did keep my attention. I rated it a 3 out of 5. The book does, however, begin with a caution from the author regarding topics of adultery, estrangement, family turmoil, and dementia. Therefore, if these are triggering topics for you, you'll want to keep that in mind. I would also rate this book very mild on the spice scale. I read other books from the same author, and they all seem to fit that category. So, if you like closed bedroom, this might be good for you. So the sixth book I read was called, well, you can see what it was called. I don't want my video getting flagged for language, so I'm just going to call it The Rooster Down the Block. But y'all know what would actually rhyme in there, right? So, it's the first book in a series that already has 4 full books out and a 5th on the way. It also appears when I look in Audible that there are 2 other Christmas-themed books that are shorter. So if you're like me and love a series but hate waiting for the next one to drop, this could be a really good fit for you because as you're going, you can just flip to the next book as you're finishing them. So this particular one is Friends to Lovers with a side of fake dating, and he definitely falls first. It's a sports romance. His whole family plays football at the elite level. Also, this book is absolutely funny. Like, it had me laughing in so many silly moments, and many of them included her pet rooster, hence the name of the book. This book has an incredibly warm cast of supporting characters who are extremely close and supportive, and you know that they're there for each other thick and thin, and I am here for it. I gave this book a 3 out of 5, and I'm excited to read the other Kingsman Brothers love stories. So don't be surprised if some of these, or at least one, is in my August reads. So a possible trigger warning in this book is just the theme of the pressure and judgment that many of us feel about our body type. She's plus size. It also accurately depicts how very toxic it can be to someone's self-esteem if you're bullied in school. So I rated this book spicy on the spice scale. While there weren't a ton of spicy scenes, there were a few that were spicier than some other books I've read. And the other thing is, when you're hearing the male protagonist's point of view, there's a lot of suggestive language in there. So I gave it spicy for those 2 reasons. So if you're not comfortable with that, this particular book in the series might not be a good fit. If I do read the others, I'll let you know. So the 7th book I read is called Out on a Limb. It was recommended by a vlogger I follow a couple months or more back, and on a whim, I put a hold on it in my library's audiobook app, and I'm so glad I did. While it took quite a while for it to come in, I pounced on it when it did, and it was absolutely my favorite romance book I read this month. 5 out of 5. Please read this book. It is fantastic and one of the best examples of a healthy relationship that I've seen in any romance novel. I adored how it demonstrated a healthy communication between the 2 main characters all throughout the process of them getting to know each other. I also believe it's the first book I've read in which physical limitations and differences was a real aspect and topic throughout the book. I loved the diversity that showed and how it showed them overcoming adversity. Nevertheless, this work contains themes of postpartum depression, cancer, disability, and abortion discussions. So please keep these things in mind if they may be triggering to you. This novel is a medium level on the spice scale, in my opinion. The bulk of the book is absolutely their clever banter, getting to know each other, but it's not a closed bedroom. You will know things are happening. Though it's easy to tell it's coming, so you could skip if that's not your thing. I also recently found out that there's a 2nd book coming or already out, so I intend to borrow this as soon as I can, so stay tuned. I also enjoy reading 1 book each month for inspiration. So this might be a biography of someone I admire or find intriguing. It could also be a self-help book, something like that. So the 8th book of my July Roundup is a social media influencer that I've been following for some time and really enjoy. Her name is Molly Burke. So she is blind and she's a YouTuber who puts a lot of time and effort into promoting accessibility for individuals with disabilities. She has been discussing her upcoming book a lot lately, and I found out that she had written one earlier about her early years and losing her vision, and this is it. It's called It's Not What It Looks Like. So this is a humorous, animated, and entirely honest account of Molly's progressive vision loss at a very early age. She frankly and honestly discusses what it's like to live with a disability. She also educates everyone on what they should do when they encounter someone with disability, especially if you're using a service dog. I really enjoyed this book and adored hearing it narrated by Molly herself. It's so cool. I give this book a 4 out of 5 for entertainment level and a 100 out of 5 on the inspiration scale. I'm really excited about her new book and hope to read it soon. So that is the 8 books I read in July. I really hope you've enjoyed my take on them. And if you have any thoughts or questions, please feel free to interact and comment below. I also would really appreciate follows and likes on other social media so that I can grow this and do this more. So thank you for watching, and I will be back in August.